Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get started here on YouTube Live and got that opened up first. So I do appreciate those joining us on YouTube. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to start welcoming you here to Gov School this afternoon. I really appreciate you taking the time out to listen to us talk about various topics. This is an open mic situation. Please maintain your mute status when you're not talking. That certainly helps everybody out with background. And we'll give everybody just a few minutes to get in here. And this is a somewhat specific topic and not appealing to very large crowds. But if you're in some of the states that have been experiencing disaster problems, this is going to be of interest to you. We are live on YouTube as well. It is not a recorded session, but it is recorded on YouTube Live, so you can automatically go back in and watch it immediately after. It's there for you to watch at your leisure. So if you miss something today, I will also send out a note to everyone. They'll have the slides themselves, as well as I have a link document that I'll help you with. And so this is the information that I think can be helpful to you with those of us who are concerned about disaster contracting. It actually is impacting, I think, just about everybody these days. And this doesn't seem to be easing up. And so it's important that you understand the various stages of disaster contracting so that you can prepare and be ready when the funds are available to you. So everybody's coming into the room now. Just as a reminder, please maintain your mute status unless you have a question, but this is an open mic session. So you can just raise your hand, technically speaking, or just unmute yourself and just interrupt us and we'll stop when necessary. I usually just focus in on the video here, but just going ahead and tell everybody hello. So we're here today and working and making sure that you get access to good quality information. And that's our goal. We, of course, Gov Directions is located in Atlanta, Georgia. We founded in 1998, and we have been serving this market now for a good 20 plus years. And we are glad to have the opportunity to serve you. And we are here to not only help you find the bids that are out there every day. This is primarily aggregation service, now serving some 116,000 registered companies, track about 50,000 active bids in any given day. We're adding about 1.5 million every year. It's a large marketplace. Every single day, not only are the ones that will appear on our site, but these others that have come out in an emergency situation, we're capturing those for you and delivering them to your match. I'm going to show you in just a few minutes how you can go about doing that. But first, I want to make sure that you're aware overall, this is a $6 trillion marketplace, which we're dealing with at all levels of government, local, state, and federal government. The primary business problem that you're faced with is the fragmentation of information. I mean, the information is just everywhere. And if you've been to any of the other classes, you probably have seen an image that I use that is a puzzle. It kind of shows you, just like a puzzle box, thousands of pieces sometimes. You open it up and it's somewhat, overwhelming to you. In fact, when pandemic started, we were all basically locked down in a disaster mode right before a significant amount of disaster funds were put forward. My daughter and I would would open up those puzzle boxes, and I would think sometimes, oh my goodness, how are we ever going to get finished with this thing? But when you start putting it together, it makes sense, and you get a little faster, and you get a little better, and you get that thing done. And that's what we do here at RFP Delivery and Gov Directions, pulling that information together for you, so you can find the bids that you really are seeking access to. Before I get into the real details of how this marketplace works in disaster spending, I'd like to show you some statistics. If you go to usaspending.gov, you can actually pull up disaster-related contracting that's actually happened. This is the largest databases of awards that have been made to companies, so you can come in and you can see where the funding has went to help companies in contracting. So you can just type in keywords like hurricane, or something like that and find it. But it is a great resource for you to come in and track what has happened in the past if you have an interest in those kind of statistics. State profiles themselves individually where the funds are at, some 201, goodness gracious, such a big number. I'm not sure. Is that billion? I think it's billion. 201 billion in that sense has been allocated and obligated. It says a lot of money in disaster spending. These are all primarily contracts for all, and specifically non-COVID. So this has nothing to do with non-COVID, but for disaster relief funding in communities to help them recover from anything from here. Federal law enforcement training. So that's from in my hometown. In fact, it's 5.3 million there that was put in place to help them recover from a hurricane, I believe. But hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, you name it, and we're now experiencing it. And so you should be aware of that. And you can kind of come in here and play around with statistics at FEMA if you like. But I just wanted to call attention to the volume that exists. Disaster spending itself, and I'm going to focus in on a couple of different states today, but you can go in and you can look at every single state the same way. We really have three levels of government. You have your federal government office, that's FEMA primarily, a Federal Emergency Management Agency that's charged directly with helping us recover when there's a situation in our communities. And that's based on a presidential declaration. It's usually requested by the governor. And so there's a lot of different levels of government working together to make sure that issues are addressed. And I would just point out that even though you hear of FEMA, a lot of times while FEMA is the funding mechanism, the contracting itself is done at the state level or even locally at the local government county emergency management agency level, trying to be involved at as localized as possible. So the decision makers themselves exist at all levels, and not every single disaster contract is going to appear in SAM, which is a system for ward management, or even within the state directory, or even at the local government website when they have some immediate needs. So it's important that you understand that even the announcement information is fragmented in itself. I mean, for example, last year when we were based in Florida, there were a lot of different organizations involved. And let me see here. I've got my disaster contracting links folder that I'm going to provide to you. But Fiona and Ian came one after another. There's 63 billion initially. And so you found bids all over the place. This is just a cheat sheet that I prepared for our individual users, from the Army Corps of Engineer, which is involved specifically when we saw the situation there in outside south of Sarasota, I believe, where large storm surges came in, and they came in to help repair bridges and so forth on an immediate basis, determining whether or not the federal government's involved or the local government or the state. And then you get the individual politicians kind of involved. We tend not to focus so much on the politics, but the actual procurement itself, so that you can get in there and win that bid. But individual states now have their own disaster pages. Like here's the one for Florida, Disasterorg, where you can go in and you can find. So they have 3 different active situations for recovery at this point. And you will find almost all of these whenever they go in initially a page for business to come in, and typically in a request for information stage where you provide to them information about your company. Important that you have your capability statement ready to go, and also pull together so you can go in and not only I'm sorry, I've got a question there too, so it's been distracting there, but I'll come to your questions in just a minute, okay, in the process here. But so you can come in there and register with your capability statement, make sure it speaks specifically to disaster spending, if that's your interest, and how you can help in disaster spending. So that, if you focus in specifically on roofing, are you clearing debris or monitoring debris removal, that you're using those keywords on that document itself. And you could even potentially have 2 different capability statements, but whenever there's an emergency situation, the first thing they're asking for in the request for information is your capabilities, so they can then potentially just call you up and work directly with you at that time. Most of the contracts at this point are immediate contracts, and they're looking for someone who can assist them very quickly and get in there and do the job. Because you have 3 different periods of disaster contracting. One, of course, is preparedness, and making sure that if you're in Florida, for example, or if you're in California, that you're registered and the appropriate databases there to let them know that you're available, almost always with the emergency management agency offices in each of those communities. But you get in there and get yourself laid out in the right way. This has nothing to do with your SAM registration. Of course, you want to be registered in SAM. You have to be in order to receive disaster-related expenditures, but it does. They're still going to pull from their own local databases. So you need to make sure you're there with your capability statement at that level. So that's your preparedness. And then you have the active stage where the disaster is ongoing. Their immediate needs almost always satisfied with requests for information of some sort at the state's emergency management agency tends to be the place where you want to go in order to do that. And then you have the after basically the restoration period, recovery period, where you're there over sometimes multiple years or decades even we still see from some Louisiana storms projects that are being funded long term that have significant amounts of dollars attached to them. So you have 3 different stages where you're watching those. And so your business can just basically be funded solely by disaster relief contracting if you potentially are providing those type of services. And so it's important that you understand then sort of what you need to do and how it's all organized. The Thomas T Stafford Disaster Relief and Emergency Assistance Act, okay? This was signed in law back in 1988, and it was used as an amendment to the Disaster Relief Act in 1974, which is the initial setup of the programs by Congress to make sure that it's organized in an appropriate way. But that law governs how funds are expended to state and local governments and also by the federal government. And it also has specific provisions in that. For example, it does require FEMA to contract with businesses that are located in the affected area when feasible and practical. That's why it's important that you registered in those communities. But the truth of the matter is, as we all know this, oftentimes you are not in a capacity, if you're in an impacted area, to respond. And so they do reach out into other communities and other places to get assistance. And in fact, you always see, even the power companies coming in from multiple areas, the Cajun Navy coming in and to help out. We have a philosophy in the United States specifically going in and really helping. In fact, I was just looking the other day about Mexico and how they actually sent a whole team of individuals up back to help in Texas and Louisiana before. And so just even beyond in Canada to beyond the typical borders to allow for relief. And so they do go outside the community when there's a disaster. And so it's important that you understand that. A lot of times when there's a long-term re-roofing, going back and refencing and repairing properties, then they do try to work in the localized area, and they will put out a local request for set aside type of programs to get their attention. Even still, oftentimes difficult to find the individuals with the right skill sets. So you should continue to watch them. But do know that the Thomas T. Stafford Disaster Relief and Emergency Act governs all disaster relief spending. And you can read about more of that within FAR, the Federal Acquisition Regulations. But anytime any federal dollars are attached to it, you have to comply with those rules. In addition, if you are a potential contractor, you do have to be registered. Even if the project is let locally, but still, if they've got the federal funds attached to it, you have to be appropriate. You have to be registered in SAM. SAM is the System for Award Management, and you have to go in not only just to register there, but you also have to complete the disaster response information section of SAM. Okay, big believer in going in and helping you watch what's actually happening, where to go. So let's just go over there and see. And FEMA will tell you in itself in their link there it's FEMA.gov/business-industry/doings-business. And it explains to you how to go in and actually register in SAM and go into SAM and what you'll need to do, including having your unique entity ID. Hopefully all of you got that. And then you're participating in this disaster response registry. Okay. And so when you click through there, acquisition.gov governs this. This is FAR, the Federal Acquisition Regulations, and they'll explain to you how to go about registry, what kind of information I'll look into. Everything's there for you. You log in, you search your record, making sure you're there, and then you can go in and register and make sure it's there. So if you do nothing else today, if you're not sure if you're that you're registered there, go in there and check your registration. Okay. And so as you remember, I said when you first came on here, I'm going to provide links to this document as well as to the slideshow itself for you after the presentation today. And SAM does itself when you go in and log in, they will call attention to it. As you remember now, SAM is, of course, the System for Award Management. This is basically accounts payable system for the federal government. It's not going to help you find the actual project that they're trying to award to you, but you do have everything set up. It sets up all your payment systems and items like this. Okay, so you can go in, entity information, and this is where you're going to find the disaster response register. You have to log in. It's completely free to register. Okay, completely free, no charge. And if you get somebody emailing you, I've been like 10 emails today from somebody telling me I'm going to expire in SAM. You're not going to expire in SAM. Just make sure you log in there and check it out, check on it every so often. I never won a federal contract. I'm not going after federal contract, but I need to be registered in SAM regardless. So I just go in there once a year and just log in, and then I'm good. It's just, they don't want you just hanging around if you're not really after federal contracts. Okay. If you're not really interested. So they purge the system every so often. So just make sure you do that. And you don't need to pay somebody $500 to do that for you. It's just logging in. But I just want to, sometimes it gets me as sort of my pet peeve, making sure you can do that. Sorry about that. Sometimes I get interrupted during these live sessions. Here we go. And so in SAM, just like I showed you, you can go there and make sure you can register. You can see they've added more features to it. They continue to do that each day and make you aware of those. You can even watch future projects there and projected projects as well. A lot of times they know this project's coming from a disaster, and they're just waiting until certain periods to actually let the project, so you can go in there and do forecasting. We have these bids, of course, every single SAM listing, every single, most of the forecasting is there at Gov Directions and RFP Delivery, and we set those aside specifically for you to watch for those. Okay, so you know that. The problem is in SAM, the business problem, there's no federal, it's only federal. There's no local and state government listing, and not even all federal. Even though it says that, you can still find those bids that are out there, subcontracting bids as well, that are really good business opportunities for you, not in that system. So a service like that, because it is primarily the accounts payable system, it's a record to make sure you're in there to be paid, but they actually find the projects that are everywhere, and that's where a service like Gov Directions provides that business solution there at rfpdelivery.com. The disaster response registry, as I showed you there, there's actually a direct link to it as well, where you can go in, you can read specifically what they're looking for. It is written in plain language, which means that you're supposed to be able to, anybody's supposed to be able to pick up the document there and understand. You can see some of these are underlined, or there's definitions. There's a whole section just on definitions. There's even a quick start guide for you to kind of really walk you through it, so everybody can do it. Okay. You should be able to do it on your own. By the time you provide the information to me, you could have already done it. It's that simple. I really want to stress that. If you really are intimidated by online sites and things like that, just schedule a time with me on at RFP Delivery. Look under demo and choose Mark, and I'll walk you through it. Okay, it's not at no charge. Okay, so it's something you can do. The federal disaster contract itself, FEMA's industrial liaison program vendor profile form, also should be submitted and emailed to FEMA. Okay. You can also use the same information once you fill it. I'd keep a copy of it, so when there's a disaster in the local area, you can send the same type of information to your state agency, like in our state's GEMA, Georgia Emergency Management, or if you're in Texas or Florida, they have their own, and they'll use the same sort of data. So when you see here, it's going to be a 1-page, 12 questions, nothing difficult. You should have the answer to it, and then you should be ready to go. And there's some of them, check all the categories, all the certifications, and never wait on certifications. In these situations, specifically in these situations, they're looking for help right away. And so, while those things certainly help you, and you should get them hopefully get some over time, never wait. Okay, that's important, because you will miss out on those opportunities and you really most of us probably need them as a business platform. And then, of course, at Business Industry Doing Business, which I took you to just a few minutes ago, kind of walks you through a whole process itself, and you're able to go in there. And it's also, I pointed out earlier, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineer. This is another great resource. Oftentimes, if you're looking at bridges and roads and lakes and reservoirs, this is the place that's going to be charged with that sort of development. And so you want to go and browse it and get some information from the Army Corps. Okay, they're always big players in disaster relief. Do an excellent job. In fact, those two agencies are really unmatched in the world, unrivaled. FEMA and our Army Corps of Engineer, they just do an excellent job. Okay, you just can't say enough good things about them. And so when you step toward there, when you step out of the federal, then you're looking really at state and local government contracting. And there, this is where you really are shaking hands on the ground kind of approach. And you're getting in there and helping right away. Almost always, they'll coordinate through the state emergency management group. And they really become the first responders. FEMA supports them and steps in the background and funds them oftentimes with big matching sort of appropriations, but the state itself is always charged with their own individual response. Never likely to change. We have our own rule philosophy in the United States, and we want to maintain that localized control. And that's important to our governors and important to their county commissioners, and because they're the ones on the ground, they understand it best, and they're the ones who are going to help you in the response. Typically at the county level, while you do see in certain areas of the country, the cities actively involved, but the cities do typically take a step back and let the counties run the emergency management offices at the local level, okay? And then coordinate all the efforts with the hospitals, with the airports, with the transit systems, and so forth. They become the principal coordinator. And you'll see, every state has their own. I've got some links here, the most common, Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, Virginia, but any of these, you could just really step in and step back and just go in and do a Google and just say, New York, or maybe you could actually go ask Chat GPT now, but New York Emergency Management Agency, and it'll pop up. Okay. And so there we go. Here it is, Office of Emergency Management, Division of Homeland Security in New York State. And shows you field operations, details. All the states are going to be basically built the same way with recovery as an area, public assistance, mitigation, disaster finance. And then, always talking about, I think earlier, maybe this was not organized specifically like this, but almost always in preparedness, in remediation, and also in active emergency situations. So you're watching those. Look and see in Georgia. I've actually had the opportunity to work there one day when during the floods in the 90s. Their organization worked with staff them. And so it's always a plan and preparedness there. Getting involved when it's an active situation, how to handle response and then recovery, and then just general planning in general and overall. But you can come in here and you can register and you can see that. Get to know your state emergency management agency. I think it's an excellent way to really come to understand how disaster spending really works. But here's just the sample websites: Kentucky, Texas, Louisiana. All of them are gearing up. Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, gearing up for the hurricane season right now. Okay, it's already, everybody is looking for it to be the most active season ever, and we have to understand that. Not to mention, the height. It's already so hot here in Atlanta. I think we're 90 plus today. It's going to be the fire seasons and the natural disaster with tornadoes. We're already seeing that in Colorado, Nebraska, all of them in a situation where they need immediate assistance with recovery. So you want to watch for those contracts. California is just inundated with the fires and the floods this past year. A lot of funding going there. Oregon, Nevada, and so on. And so understand there's multiple contracting sites. I would just point out once again, all of these are located at GovDirections and RFPDelivery.com. And so you can come in there and you can watch those. Here's the Homeland Security Advanced Acquisition Planning System, where their potential contracting opportunities are published. These are the ones we think are coming quickly. Could be roofing repairs at a military base, for example. They're getting the funds lined up and they're announcing that and giving you a heads up. Also think about those organizations that are not necessarily in the government sector per se, but more quasi, but like the Red Cross, and others that are potentially need assistance with, setting up tents, tent rentals, cones for traffic situations, things like this. So don't just think about debris removal, but think of in your business, all around those, or potentially funding by disaster spending when there's a situation that they potentially assist with staffing services, and so on. Just a lot of different areas. And so when you do that, here's just a sample capability statement. I need to move this up just a little bit, but it's how important it is, okay? And that you lay it out the right way and easy to understand. And if you don't have that one done, I always say it's one thing you want to invest in besides finding the bid first, but it's getting that capability statement ready, because you're going to about 30 to 40% of the requests are going to come in the form of a source of salt request for information or an immediate response requirement where you got to send them a capability statement. It's not an active bid opportunity just yet. Those oftentimes go straight to bid, but you got to get it there first. Okay. And so I need to just drive that home. At GovDirections, or in our RFP delivery service, which is the primary mechanism for us to deliver requests for informations now, you do find there a geospatial analysis where we're coming in and telling you where the bids are located physically, so you can drill down into them. You can come in and specifically drill down into disaster-related opportunities. For example, here's emergency preparedness. This is more preparedness bids and RFPs, only active, never speaking specifically, never speculative. Okay, these are all going to eventually happen. They're going to be a due date assigned to them. Someone is going to win that contract. So here's a disaster response down in Florida. It looks like, and when you open it up, it's going to give you some basic information about that bid. This is in Monroe County, it's Key West. Okay, they've got an active situation where they need some assistance, and they've got a bid on the street, and you can go in, you can monitor that. You can save that bid. I always capture it too. This is save it as a PDF. This is capturing it online in my capture folder. That way I can come back later on and maybe next year see where all I've been watching for the disasters. You can view those save bids there, but then going in and actually seeing it, drill it down into a map into where it's actually located. Monroe County is one of my favorite places, so I like to get down there anytime you can. It's right there in Key West area. There's Louis' backyard if you haven't been there. Speaking of which, I don't know who, if anybody caught my my coy little joke in the email today about Forrest, how he profited off of a disaster. If anybody happens to know how he did that, type it in the chat box and we'll have a little fun here in just a few minutes. But Forrest Gump, of course, came in there, owned himself a shrimp boat, and then a disaster came in and something happened and he got made a lot of money. So that was just a little bit of joke there. And so you too can continue to watch what's happening and then turn a bad situation into a silver lining, and going in there and making sure you do that. Let's go back in services, debris removal contracts. These are active contracts. This other was more a category for preparation, but here's some more contracts. You can see it's entered in on the Southeast right now. No one knows how Forrest made money off the disaster. Okay. And so going in there, there's all different kinds here. So this is, my basic presentation today. So you can go in there, you can find them. You can also use keywords, type in a keyword like hurricane, see where money's went in, or fire, any kind. You can actually use the Boolean search technique to find those, meaning you can have broad individual, see, I'm not pushing there we go. You have broad searches. So I can go in and type in hurricane with a conjunction or fire or flood, and I can get in there and I can see those there. So some questions I'm getting right now. First, Mark, have you sent over the presentation? The presentations, that might be an individualized question there, Lasagna, but this presentation here will go out to everyone after the session. Okay. Is this a search a paid service? Our search, you can do everything I've just done at no charge. Our search system itself has various prices for more newspaper style publishing, local government bids. We do require paid access. It's $34 for 1 month, $54 for region. We are built like a research cooperative. So all of you, instead of you having to do it yourself, you buy into a service that does all this research for you. Forrest was definitely the only one that survived a hurricane, and then he struck his shrimp boat, and he captured all those shrimp and then went into the shrimping business. thanks to his best friend Bubba Gump. And so and then he ended up making an investment. I believe it was an Apple, and then he got rich. So that was the coy little remark about Forrest Gump. So you never know how things are going to turn out. Okay. More questions? Any questions? Disaster spending is good business. There's a lot of funds that now have been set aside for disaster relief contracting. So I do encourage you to monitor it as you go along. I have a group people still coming into the room. This is a popular topic. And we do this session every so often. Tomorrow morning, I'm actually going to talk about the RFP, request for proposal, at GovSchool. You're welcome to join that class. And this is where you can actually step in and really know what to look out for when you're reading an RFP. And specifically when you're dealing with disaster response, there's still going to be rules and regs that you have to follow. Knowing where to go find those is important. And so that's going to be tomorrow afternoon at 1:30 p.m. Just the same channel here, and you can come and visit with us if you have questions. Any more questions today? So I kept you 30 minutes. I try not to keep you longer than that. This session here was recorded.